I never thought I'd be the type of mother who missed her only daughter's baby shower. Then again, I never thought I'd be the type of mother who embarrassed her daughter just by being myself. Life has a funny way of surprising you. My name is Darlene, and all my life, I've been what polite people call colorful and what impatient people call too much. I've always dressed in bright patterns and bold colors. I talk with my hands. I laugh too loudly. I tell stories that meander before getting to the point. I hug people I've just met. I wear chunky jewelry that jingles when I move. I am, in essence, exactly who I've always been. Unfiltered, unabashed, and unapologetically present. My daughter Caroline is nothing like me. She's always been reserved, careful, and proper. Even as a child, she color-coordinated her crayons and neatly stayed within the lines. While I filled our home with mismatched furniture and vibrant art, she kept her room in shades of beige and white. When I'd belt out songs in the grocery store, she'd walk 3 paces ahead, pretending not to know me. I used to think it was just a phase. Teenagers are supposed to be embarrassed by their parents, aren't they? But Caroline never grew out of it. Even after college, marriage, and building her own life, she remained uncomfortable with my exuberance. I learned to temper myself around her, to speak a little softer, dress a little plainer, share a little less. It hurt, but I told myself it was part of loving her, making these small sacrifices for her comfort. The day everything changed was Easter Sunday, 3 months ago. Caroline and her husband Ryan had recently joined a new church, one of those modern ones with a coffee bar in the lobby and a pastor who wears jeans. They'd invited me to attend the Easter service with them, and I was thrilled. I'd been trying to be part of their lives in whatever small ways they permitted, and this felt like progress. I spent hours choosing my outfit. I wanted to look nice, festive for Easter, but not too Darlene. I settled on a floral dress. Yes, the flowers were large and colorful, but the background was a respectable navy blue. I paired it with coral shoes and a matching coral cardigan. I wore only 2 bangle bracelets instead of my usual armful and small earrings rather than the dangling ones I prefer. I even toned down my makeup, just a touch of coral lipstick to match my sweater. When I arrived at the church, Caroline's smile tightened at the sight of me. She gave me a quick hug, her body stiff. "You look bright," she said, her eyes darting around as if checking whether anyone had noticed me yet. "It's Easter, sweetheart, a celebration," I replied, trying to keep my voice at what I thought was an acceptable volume. She nodded tersely and led me inside. The church was beautiful, dairy and modern with natural light streaming through large windows. The congregation was dressed in a mix of styles, from casual to formal. I noticed at least 3 other women in floral dresses, though theirs had smaller, more subdued patterns. We found seats toward the front, where Caroline and Ryan apparently sat every Sunday. I settled in beside them, genuinely excited to share this experience. The service was lovely, contemporary music, an engaging sermon about new beginnings. During one particularly moving song, I raised my hand slightly, feeling the spirit, and Caroline immediately reached over and pulled it down, shooting me a glare. After the service, we stood in the lobby where people gathered for coffee and conversation. Caroline was greeted warmly by several couples her age. She introduced me stiffly as my mother, Darlene, without the usual "I'd like you to meet" or any warmth in her voice. Still, I smiled and chatted with the young couples, asking about their children, their work, their experiences at the church. When one woman complimented my festive dress, I launched into the story of finding it on sale last summer, how I'd been saving it for a special occasion, and how the saleswoman had told me the color brought out the warmth in my complexion. It wasn't a particularly long or involved story, but I noticed Caroline shifting uncomfortably beside me. A young mother asked about my grandchildren, and I excitedly shared that Caroline was expecting my first grandchild in August. "I've been knitting up a storm," I told her. "Yellow and green everything since they're waiting to find out the gender. I'm hoping for a girl, though." "I've already found the most adorable little dresses with flamingos on them." I didn't think I was being especially loud or effusive, but I could feel Caroline's growing discomfort. When Ryan mentioned they needed to get going for their lunch reservation, I felt a mix of disappointment and relief. In the parking lot, Caroline finally spoke. "Mom, could you try to be a little less you next time?" I blinked, confused. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" Her cheeks flushed with irritation. "Your outfit was too loud for church, everyone was staring, and those stories? Nobody needed to hear about your shopping adventures or your grandchild opinions. You were just too much." I was just being friendly, I said, trying to keep the hurt from my voice. I thought they seemed interested. They were being polite, she snapped. You embarrassed me, Mom. This is our church community. These are people we see every week. I don't need them thinking my mother is some kind of circus act. A circus act? The words hit me like a physical blow. I'd spent my whole life being told I was too colorful, too talkative, too everything by classmates, by my ex-husband, by coworkers, but never had my daughter described me in such harsh terms. I see, I said quietly. I'm sorry I embarrassed you. Just try harder next time, she said, the anger in her voice giving way to exasperation. Maybe wear something more appropriate. And let other people talk. You don't have to fill every silence. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. Ryan, looking uncomfortable, mumbled something about being late for their reservation. I hugged Caroline goodbye, a brief, awkward embrace, and walked to my car. I cried the whole way home. Not loud, dramatic sobs, just silent tears tracking down my cheeks, ruining the makeup I'd applied so carefully that morning. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I had made a decision. I would no longer twist myself into knots trying to be acceptable to my daughter. I would no longer make myself small to fit into her idea of who I should be. I was 62 years old. I had spent decades trying to dim my light for others' comfort. I was done. 2 weeks later, Caroline called to tell me she and Ryan had decided to find out the baby's gender after all. They were having a girl. Despite everything, my heart soared with joy. A granddaughter, I exclaimed. Oh, Caroline, that's wonderful. We're excited, she said, her voice warm for the first time since Easter. We're going to have a gender reveal at the baby shower, pink decorations hidden under neutral ones. That sounds lovely, I said, genuinely happy for her. Mom, her voice softened further. I know we haven't really talked since Easter. I'm sorry if I was harsh. I was just, you know how important first impressions are. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was something. I understand, I said, though in truth, I didn't. I would never understand how my daughter could be ashamed of me simply for being who I am. So, she continued, the baby shower is June 5th at my friend Melissa's house. It's going to be very tasteful, a garden party theme. I'll text you the details. I hesitated for just a moment. Caroline, before I agree to come, I need to ask, will my presence embarrass you? There was a pause, too long for comfort. Of course not, Mom. Just, maybe wear something simple. Most of the guests will be from church. I closed my eyes, feeling a familiar ache in my chest. I see. It's not a big deal, she said quickly. I just want everything to be perfect. Of course you do, sweetheart. After we hung up, I sat on my sofa for a long time, thinking about what perfect meant to Caroline and what it meant to me. For her, perfection was controlled, coordinated, predictable. For me, it had always been authentic, vibrant, unrehearsed. The formal invitation arrived a few days later, an elegant card with pressed flowers and flowing script. A garden party to celebrate baby Miller, it read. I ran my fingers over the embossed lettering, imagining the careful planning Caroline had put into every detail. Then I picked up my phone and composed a text. Caroline, I've given this a lot of thought. I won't be attending the baby shower. Wouldn't want to embarrass you again. I'll send a gift. Love, Mom. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Then I turned off my phone and went to bed early, exhausted by the decision but certain it was the right one. The next morning, I had 3 missed calls from Caroline and 1 text. Mom, what are you talking about? Call me. I didn't call. Instead, I spent the day at my favorite craft store, picking out the softest, most beautiful yarn in every shade of pink imaginable. I would make my granddaughter a blanket that sparkled with color and warmth, even if her mother preferred beige. Caroline called twice more over the next few days. I let the calls go to voicemail. Her messages grew increasingly frustrated. Mom, you're being ridiculous. Please call me back so we can discuss this like adults. You're making this into something it doesn't need to be. Finally, a week after I'd declined the invitation, she showed up at my door unannounced, her pregnant belly just beginning to show beneath her crisp white blouse. Mom, she said as soon as I opened the door, what is going on with you? I stepped aside to let her in. My living room was in its usual state, colorful throw pillows scattered across the couch, half-finished craft projects on the coffee table, music playing softly in the background. Caroline surveyed it all with barely concealed disapproval. "Would you like some tea?" I asked. "I want an explanation," she said. "Why aren't you coming to my baby shower?" I gestured for her to sit, then settled into my favorite armchair, a riot of embroidered flowers against a turquoise background. "I think you know why, Caroline." She crossed her arms over her chest. "Because I asked you to dress appropriately for church? That's worth missing your only grandchild's baby shower?" I took a deep breath. "No, sweetheart, because you made it clear that who I am, my essence, my personality, the way I express myself, is an embarrassment to you. And I decided I'm too old and too tired to pretend to be someone else, even for you." "That's not what I said," she protested. "You called me a circus act." She had the grace to flush. "I was frustrated. I didn't mean it like that." "How did you mean it then?" She sighed, smoothing her hair back from her face, a gesture she'd had since childhood, something she did when choosing her words carefully. "I just meant that you can be a bit overwhelming sometimes, especially for people who don't know you. I'm 62 years old, Caroline. This is who I am. I talk with my hands. I laugh loudly. I wear colors that make me happy. I share stories and ask questions and engage with people. That's not going to change." "I'm not asking you to change completely," she insisted, "just to tone it down in certain situations. Like your baby shower, where all the proper church ladies will be judging everything from the napkin folds to your mother's choice of shoes." The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. Caroline's eyes welled with tears. "Is it so wrong to want things to be nice? To care what people think? Not everyone can just not care like you do." Her words struck me as profoundly sad. What a burden it must be to constantly worry about others' judgments, to never feel the freedom of being fully yourself. "Oh, Caroline," I said softly, "I do care. I care so much. But what I care about most is being authentic, being true to myself. And I raised you to be the same, to be exactly who you are, even when who you are is nothing like me." "That's different," she whispered. "Because..." She gestured vaguely at my colorful living room, my bright clothing, my mismatched throw pillows. "Because your way is too much for most people." "And your way is too little for me," I replied gently. "But I've never asked you to change. I've never been embarrassed by your quietness, your careful choices, your need for control. I've always accepted you exactly as you are." Tears spilled down her cheeks now. "It's not the same." "It is, sweetheart. It absolutely is." We sat in silence for a long moment, the gulf between us feeling wider than ever. Finally, Caroline spoke, her voice small. "So, you're really not coming to the shower?" "No," I said firmly, "I'm not. But that doesn't mean I don't love you, or that I'm not excited about my granddaughter. It just means I'm finally setting a boundary. I won't put myself in situations where I have to pretend to be less than I am to make you comfortable." "Fine," she said, standing up abruptly. "Have it your way." I walked her to the door, my heart heavy. As she stepped onto the porch, I said, "Caroline, I hope one day you'll understand that I'm doing this because I love you. And because I finally love myself enough too." She didn't respond, just walked to her car without looking back. The day of the baby shower arrived, a perfect June afternoon with clear skies and a gentle breeze. I imagined the scene at Melissa's house: tasteful decorations in subdued colors, carefully selected finger foods, soft music playing in the background. I imagined Caroline, radiant in her pregnancy, opening gifts with measured enthusiasm and appropriate gratitude. I spent the day in my garden, planting wildflowers in riotous, unplanned patterns. I wore my brightest sundress and sang along to the oldies station playing on my portable radio. When my neighbor commented on my unusual energy, I told her, "I'm celebrating my granddaughter today in my own way." That evening, I packaged up the gifts I'd bought for Caroline's baby: the handmade pink blanket, a set of colorful children's books, a tiny dress with flamingos dancing across the fabric. I included a card with a simple message: For my granddaughter, may she always know she is perfectly herself. Love, Grandma Darlene. I shipped the package the next day. Caroline didn't acknowledge receiving it. Weeks passed. Summer deepened. The wildflowers in my garden bloomed and faded. I heard nothing from Caroline, though my friends kept me updated through social media about her pregnancy progress. Then, on a sweltering August afternoon, my phone rang. It was Ryan. "Darlene," he said, his voice tight with emotion. "Caroline's in labor. We're at Memorial Hospital." My heart raced. "I'll be right there." "Wait," he said quickly. "She doesn't know I'm calling you. She's been stubborn about this whole thing, but it's not right. You should be here." I hesitated, torn between my desire to be there for this momentous occasion and my promise to myself to honor my own boundaries. "Ryan, I appreciate the call, but I won't go where I'm not wanted." "She wants you there," he insisted. "She's just too proud to say it. She's been miserable since your fight, crying over baby clothes, talking about how you'd know exactly what to do when the baby comes." He paused. "Please, Darlene, for both of them." I agreed to come, but as I drove to the hospital, anxiety knotted my stomach. What if Caroline sent me away? What if my presence added stress to an already intense situation? What if, even in this most primal of moments, I was still too much? I needn't have worried. When I quietly entered the delivery room, Caroline was between contractions, her face flushed and damp with sweat. She looked up at me, and for a moment I saw my little girl again. Vulnerable, scared, needing her mother. "Mom," she whispered, "you came." "Of course I did, sweetheart." I moved to her side, taking her hand. "Wild horses couldn't keep me away." She squeezed my hand as another contraction built. "I'm scared," she admitted through gritted teeth. "I know, honey, but you're stronger than you know, and I'm right here." For the next 4 hours, nothing mattered except bringing my granddaughter into the world. Caroline didn't care that I was too loud, encouraging her with each push. She didn't mind that I wiped her brow with a bright purple handkerchief I pulled from my purse. She didn't comment on my jangling bracelets or the stories I told between contractions to distract her from the pain. When Lily Elizabeth finally arrived, her lusty cries filling the room, Caroline sobbed with relief and joy. The nurse placed the tiny squirming bundle on Caroline's chest, and I watched as my daughter transformed before my eyes, becoming a mother, fierce and tender all at once. "She's perfect," Caroline breathed, counting tiny fingers and toes. "She is," I agreed, tears streaming down my face. "Absolutely perfect." Later, when Caroline was resting and Ryan had gone to the cafeteria, I sat in a chair by the window, holding my granddaughter. Lily gazed up at me with unfocused newborn eyes, her tiny hand wrapped around my finger. "Hello, my sweet girl," I whispered. "I'm your Grandma Darlene, the loud one, the colorful one, the one who will always, always celebrate exactly who you are." Caroline stirred in the hospital bed, her eyes finding mine. "Mom?" "Yes, sweetheart?" "I'm sorry," she said simply, "for everything." I smiled at her, this miracle of a woman who had just performed the most incredible feat of strength and vulnerability. "There's nothing to be sorry for. We're different, you and I, and that's perfectly okay." "No," she insisted, struggling to sit up. "It's not okay. I've been judgmental, critical. I made you feel like who you are isn't good enough, and that's exactly what I've always been afraid of people doing to me." She wiped at fresh tears. "I don't want Lily to ever feel that way. I don't want her to ever dim her light for anyone, not even for me." I moved to sit on the edge of her bed, still cradling Lily. "Oh, Caroline, that's the most beautiful thing you could say." She touched her daughter's cheek with gentle fingers. "When you didn't come to the shower, I was so angry. But then I started thinking about how it would feel if someone asked me to be different, to be louder or more outgoing or more colorful, when that's just not who I am. And I realized what I've been doing to you all these years." She looked up at me, her eyes clear and direct. "It wasn't fair, and I'm truly sorry." "I forgive you," I said without hesitation, "and I hope you can forgive me for missing your shower. That was a big day, and I should have been there." She shook her head. "No, you made the right choice. You set a boundary, and it forced me to really see myself." She glanced down at Lily, then back at me with a small smile. Though the shower would have been a lot more fun with you there. It was beautiful, but a little boring. I laughed, the sound filling the quiet hospital room. Well, we can't have boring for Miss Lily here. She's going to need some color in her life. From both of us, Caroline agreed. The quiet one and the loud one. I leaned down to press a kiss to Lily's forehead, then to Caroline's. Perfect balance. 3 months later, we gathered at my house for Lily's first professional photos. Caroline had hired a photographer who specialized in family portraits, and we'd agreed to include 3 generations in the pictures. As we prepared for the session, Caroline surveyed my living room critically. It's very vibrant in here, she observed. The photographer said neutral backgrounds work best. I tensed, waiting for her to ask me to tone it down, to put away the colorful pillows and bright artwork. Instead, she smiled. It's perfect. Just like you, Mom. Lily should know where she comes from, all parts of her heritage. The photographer agreed, arranging us against the backdrop of my most colorful wall with its gallery of eclectic art and shelves of treasures collected over a lifetime. In my favorite photo from that day, Caroline sits in my turquoise armchair, elegant in a simple white dress, holding Lily in her little pink romper. I stand behind them, my hand on Caroline's shoulder, wearing a flowing caftan in shades of purple and blue. We're all looking at Lily, our faces filled with love and wonder. It hangs now in both our homes, a reminder that family isn't about being the same, it's about making room for our differences, celebrating our unique patterns, and loving each other exactly as we are. And when Lily grows up, whether she's quiet like her mother or colorful like her grandmother or something entirely her own, she'll know she never has to dim her light to be loved. Because that's the lesson we finally learned. True love doesn't ask you to be smaller. It gives you the space to be fully, gloriously yourself.